In this module, you will be in a position to understand number 1, know the concept of acculturation. Number 2, learn the historical development of the concepts. Number 3, identify methods of acculturation. Now we will discuss the meaning and nature of acculturation. Acculturation is a dual process of psychological and cultural change that occurs when an ethnic group settles with non-ethnic group for some period of time. At an individual level, this process highlights psychological change. Since an individual in new context as a result of contact exhibit behavioral and attitudinal change within oneself, it is a form of re-socialization whereby immigrants are exposed to new ways of thinking and acting, new beliefs, values, attitudes, etc. At a group level, it is cultural change since the group is exposed to new customs, values, socializations and institutions. The group requires and associates oneself with the culture of another group. Generally speaking, the kind of cultural change will impact both parties, whether it's a natives or inhabitants, those who were already settled in the context, and second are the migrants who are motivated to be settled in new context. This form of cultural change is relatively for a long time, or one can say long term. It is a process of change that occurs when individuals with different culture interact with each other and learn and share common geographical space together. Indeed, the process of acculturation had instilled interest in various social scientists including sociologists, anthropologists and psychologists especially. Thus, various definitions had been formulated by various theorists from across disciplines to highlight the meaning of the construct of acculturation. Few definitions that formulate acculturation in timeline are given as below. Acculturation comprehends those phenomena which result when groups of individuals having different cultures come into continuous first-hand contact with subsequent changes in the original culture pattern of either or both the groups taken together. The social science research define acculturation is a culture change initiated by the conjunction of two or more autonomous cultural systems. Acculturative change may be the consequence of direct cultural transmission. It may be derived from non-cultural causes such as ecological or demographic modifications induced by an impinging culture. It may be delayed as with internal adjustments following upon the acceptance of aligned traits or pattern, or it may be a reactive adaptation of transformational models of life. These two formulations brings out important points into the discussion, namely number A, culture change may be caused due to direct or indirect contact between two cultures, and the change may occur in two intensity delayed, slowly and steadily over the years, and reactive means rate of change, and adaptation with another culture is fast. Gordon in 1964 defined acculturation as the adoption of the cultural norms and behavioral patterns or majority of the group, that is core groups. Gans in 1999 defined acculturation as the newcomer's adoption of the culture, that is, the behavior patterns of practices, values, rules, symbols, and so forth of the host society, that is, or an overtly homogenized and reified conception. Definitions proposed by Gans and Gordon emphasized the unidirectional models of cultural change, whereas the immigrants adopt the culture of migrated society may be beneficial or voluntarily to create uniformity in the society for the people to understand who live in that society. Indeed, the first two definitions, especially the first one, emphasize that culture change is bidirectional in process and nature. Organizer, Martin and Chun in 2010 attempted to propose a holistic definition of the term acculturation. They defined acculturation is a dynamic and multidimensional process of adaptation that occurs when distinct cultures come into sustained contact over a long period of time. It involves different degrees and instances of culture learning and maintenance that are contingent upon individual, groups, and environmental factors. They further clarified acculturation is a dynamic because it is continuous and functioning process, and it is multidimensional because it transpires across numerous indices of psychological functioning and can result in multiple adaptation outcomes at the end. Finally, few features we derive from the above definitions about the term acculturation are: A. It is a form of cultural change that comes as a result of group contact. B. It is a bidirectional process whereby both culture came in contact, affects each other turn by turn. C. Change is manifested through exposure of beliefs, values, and norms. D. It is multidimensional process of personal development. E. Individuals undergoing acculturation process may acquire different strategies to adapt in other cultures.
Cultural assimilation, cultural integration, and cultural incorporation. These terms had been synonymously used in place of acculturation by sociologists and anthropologists. However, assimilation, integration, and incorporation are terms that emphasize the ethnic group becomes part of formal and non-formal ethnic associations of the host society in non-ethnic group. Thus, these terms are used for cultural change of an ethnic group in new culture. In contrast, acculturation is observed to be seen as process of cultural change at an individual level. Thus, the major difference between acculturation and cultural assimilation, cultural integration, and cultural incorporation is the latter terms are used to refer a group process while acculturation refers to an individual process. The term incorporation highlights the participation of an individual in society vis-a-vis right to vote, cultural activities, meetings, and being part of association. This incorporation reflects civic incorporation of the individuals. The term assimilation is used by sociologists. Milton, 1964, proposed the term structural assimilation, whereby stress was maintained on integrating the immigrants structurally, that is, physically in primary groups like associations, clubs, and society, etc. There are different forms of assimilation advocated by sociologists. Foner, 1999, offered an alternative expression for cultural change as segmented assimilation. Segmented assimilation is the process of assimilation into a particular social segment ranging from the middle to the lower classes. He clarified segmented assimilation does not emphasize complete internalization of values, beliefs, and attitude of dominant group. Rather, significantly there is the blend of two cultures that creates another form of culture within the immigrants. One of the groundbreaking research that throw light on this process of creation of new culture was done by Thomas and Zanicki, 1918, on Polish Americans. In an early development of the work in acculturation, politicians and social scientists enshrined the term e pluribus unum, out of many, one. It was emphasized that politicians and social scientists expected immigrants to subdue their values, beliefs, and lifestyle and become as one from the host society. Indeed, one can trace back the research on acculturation during the late 18th century. For instance, in writing of Holmes, 1886, Bose, 1896, McGee, 1898. However, they used different names to explain this phenomena. For instance, McGee, 1998, used piratical acculturation and amicable acculturation to explain transfer of customs from lower grade to higher grade. Later works in 19th century. Margaret Mead, 1932, wrote The Changing Culture of an Indian Tribe. Monica Hunter Wilson, 1936, worked on reaction to conquest, describing repercussion of contacts among the Pondo and other natives of South Africa. Lewis, 1935, did an intensive study of Crow-Indian culture of the Buffalo period, emphasized the process of acculturation. Few other studies includes Herkowitz, 1927, Lesser, 1933, Redfield, 1929, Shapira, 1934, and Speyer, 1935, showed significance of acculturation. However, the work done in 18th and 19th century was really limited, and psychologists neglected the work on acculturation till 20th century. Studies have been done to find out the factors that facilitate the process of acculturation. Berry, Portinga, Siegel, and Dayson, 2002, highlighted five aspects of acculturational context that facilitate process of acculturation. A. Two original cultures, A and B. B. The two ethnocultural groups, A dash and B dash, and the nature of their contact and interactions. A. Two culture, A and B, in which A refers to the original culture and B refers to the culture in which one plans to settle. B. As both come in contact, especially the migrant from A culture, lot of transformation, substitution, and reformation of its own culture may happen. Studies indicate that there is a continuum of change happening. It is rarely seen that there is no other change or complete transformation of culture. Therefore, an ethnocultural group is created with the blend of A. Prior culture and B. Posterior culture. It may refer to as A dash and B dash. C. Finally, the nature of their contact and interactions may have following factors that will affect acculturation. Degree of voluntariness. If the migrants have voluntarily wished to be a part of the culture, this form of motive is a positive motive. The migrants are pulled towards that culture. In such cases, acculturation may be less stressful and the positive strategies may be acquired by the migrant. Contrary, if the migrants were pushed towards a particular culture, they have negative motives against the culture. They may not acculturate themselves to that culture. Berry, Kim, Mind, and Mock, 1987. The context in which migrants plans to settle will also affect the acculturation process. In plural society, acculturation process happens far better than the society which believes in unicultural ideology. Berry and Callan, 1995. In fact, an individual undergoing acculturation process passes through four stages before integrating oneself into the new society or culture. X. Mary, Law and Barbara, 2000. The first stage is of the initial enthusiasm, which involves eagerness, anxiety about the future, and feeling of optimism for being in a new country with new opportunities. Second stages consist of the cultural shock which the newcomers have to face due to a total change in the surroundings. In this stage, the newcomers may experience confusion, misunderstandings, feel depressed or isolated. All this happens due to a complete shift of situations and conditions for the newcomers. After surpassing the second stage successfully, then comes the third stages, which is recovery that includes the newcomers to have a better approach towards situation and feel less anxious. The final stage thereafter comprises of integration, whereby the newcomers are able to associate themselves well with the newfound place and culture. They are able to value both old and the new cultures. The psychological distress and anxiety about adjusting in a new surrounding gets eliminated and the people settle in their new habitat with their emotional equilibrium and trust restored. Berry, 2004, had summarized the nature of group contact in a framework whereby he compared group contact in ethnic relations and acculturation. According to Berry, the process of group contact in acculturation and ethnic relations begin with similar political, historical, and economic context. However, there are differences in the nature of group contact in acculturation as compared to ethnic relations. Individuals undergoing acculturation formulate their attitude by either shedding or learning the cultural ethos of the previous or present culture respectively. As a result, changes in behavioral repertoire are observed and individuals either identify with both or any one culture strongly. Thus, it depends on the level of identifications with both or either one of the cultures that the individual will exhibit stress or harmony. In contrast, nature of group relations emphasizes the stereotypes, the prejudice, and the attitude change that the group formulates for the other group. The level of discrimination and security that individual feels for other culture will guide the outcome. Interestingly, the outcome of the acculturations and ethnic relations are similar, as the individual undergoing acculturation or groups encountering ethnic contact either show harmony or exhibit stress in their relations. Organista, Marin and Chun 2010 had proposed few models of acculturation. These models draw attention to the nature of acculturation. These models describe processes that an individual and a group as a whole may undergo during acculturation. Unidirectional model of acculturation. It proposes that the group of people settled in other culture move away from their origin towards the group of community that is dominant at that time. They attempt to mimic the other culture. Chun, Ball, Organista, and Marin 2003 had relegated these cultural change at one direction and observed some retention of original aspect of culture is maintained. Ethnogenesis, the process of integrating oneself in other culture and forming one's own subculture by blending the values, beliefs of original culture and majority group is called ethnogenesis. The term ethnogenesis means genesis, that is origin of the new ethos, that is culture. This model shares that immigrants often show such tendencies of integrating the styles of two cultures so that they can identify with two groups. Emphasis on individual. One of the models emphasizes that the individual's response towards each culture will impact the acculturation process of the immigrants. Berry, 2003, had proposed a comprehensive framework to explain the individual's reaction towards maintaining one's own culture and acquiring the attitude of other culture can lead to four kinds of responses: assimilation, marginalization, integration, and separation. The following strategies will be discussed in detail in next topic of acculturative stress and behavioral strategies. The role of social context. Rambot and Potts 2001 suggested a different model, which emphasized the social context in which the immigrants are migrating, plays a significant role in acculturation process, especially in context of second generation. Few factors like human capital, level of discrimination, civic incorporation of their parents plays an important role. Ports 2001 emphasized that there are two possible outcomes. If context in which immigration happens is rated positively, then it results in biculturalism. On the contrary, negative effect of the social context in which the first generation is living might result in downwards assimilation. Biculturalism. It is the positive outcome of the acculturation. This model emphasizes immigrants acquire knowledge of two cultures and identify, incorporate, and attain proficiency in language, customs, and beliefs of both cultures. The process of adapting with two cultures is called biculturalism. Few characteristics noticeable in bicultural individual are Hong Morris Chiu and Bennett Martinez 2000 observed bicultural individuals gain proficiency in both the languages. They exhibit flexible cognitive style as they can switch from one cultural framework to another. Laframboise et al. 1933 observed that bicultural individuals show better psychological well-being than monoculture individuals. They attain stable sense of identity and show positive effect for both the cultures. Bicultural individuals acquire physical and mental health and outperform academically and vocationally better in comparison to monocultural peers. Enculturation. Soldier 1985 observed phenomena of enculturation, especially with the third generation of the immigrants. He stated, individuals who endeavor to learn or affirm their culture of origin are often described as undergoing a process of enculturation. Such phenomena was noticed within third generations of migrants population. In a research study with Irish Americans and Italian American, the third generation, as compared to the first generation, exhibited greater sense of belonging towards their own original culture rather than migrated cultures. Goring, 1971. However, studies indicated that the level of change and resurgence for one's own original culture is much deeper than observed. Zimmerman, Ramirez Wallace, Washchenko, Walter, and Dyer 1996 did a research study on Americans Indian in which they measured the sense of pride and urge to gain knowledge about one's own culture and tradition. The American Indians show high level of involvement in their traditions, customs, and exhibited greater sense of pride for their original culture. Berry, 2004, shared that there are two processes that is inherent in the process of acculturation. Cultural shedding is the process of gradual elimination of acquired values and customs. Cultural learning is the process in which individual undergoes acculturation acquires new symbols and sign of migrated culture. However, no individual can totally be acculturated or unacculturated. There is a continuum of acculturation. This brings rise to the concept of level of acculturation. Marin, 1992, proposed three different levels of acculturation. Three level of acculturation includes superficial level, intermediate level, and basic level in hierarchy in a descending order. These levels are differentiated on the basis of the range of the level of significance that an individual owes to symbols of the culture. The lowest level of personal significant symbols will be easily shed, while the strongest symbols will be difficult to remove in the mindset and behavior of the individuals undergoing acculturation. Researchers have developed various tools, instruments, and designs to assess the level of acculturation. Organista, Marin and Chun, 2010, reported that most studies rely on self-report paper pencil instruments on assessing the level of acculturation. To name the few, bidimensional acculturation scale for Hispanics, Marin and Gamba, 1996. African American Acculturation Scale, Landrin and Klonoff, 1996. The questions in the instrument largely include the report on their preference, values, ethnicity, languages, beliefs, and value system. However, the outcomes of the studies using different measuring instruments in the same cultures show variations in their result. Zane and Mack, 2003, Marin and Gaba, 1996. These researchers suggested the variations in outcomes were due to the kinds of tools used to measure the levels of acculturation. Few limitations observed within the psychological research while studying acculturation. Within last decades of studies on acculturation, psychologists had followed a static approach to understand intergroup relations. There had been limited studies that inquire the motivations of an individual who plans to acculturate. According to Padilla and Perez, 2003, this is imperative to understand the cause and motivation behind acculturation, as this will impact the social cognition of the individuals undergoing acculturation. Secondly, the theories of acculturation had been generalized across the individuals without analyzing even the nature of group, race, status, and culture they had come from. In thrust, there had been wrong notion carried across the mindset of the researchers about the process of acculturation as being uniform in nature. The scales developed one covers specific domain of behavior. There is limited research done in the area of acculturation. Since this is an era of globalization, cultural contact is a natural part of our lifestyle. Largely all societies had become a melting point, and many cultures coexist, live together, and form the developmental Nike for the generations to come. With times, the concept of acculturation had broadened to those people who are sojourns, like education, tourism, jobs, business, etc., to their countries and migrate for a small period of time. Nevertheless, the research done in this field is not enough, and the methodologies to inquire such a sensitive issue need to be developed by social scientists.
Summary. Number one, the process of acculturation has instilled interest in sociologists, anthropologists, and psychologists especially. Number two, there are four stages of acculturation: initial, enthusiasm, cultural shock, recovery, and integration. Number three, no individuals can totally be acculturated or unculturated. There is a continuum of acculturation which brings rise to the concept of the level of acculturation. Number three, the models of acculturations draws attention to its nature. These models describe processes that an individual and a group as a whole may undergo during the entire process of acculturation. The fourth one, the Martin in 1992 proposed three different levels of acculturation, which includes superficial level, the intermediate level, and basic level in hierarchy in an descending order. Number five, researchers have adopted various models or tools, instruments, and designs to assess the level of acculturation which is present in the society. 6. The theoretical and methodological issues around acculturations include at least 3 points. A. Motivation of individual who decide to acculturate is not given due to consideration while doing research. B. Acculturation is assumed to be a uniform process. C. Finally, assessment procedures used self-inventory that were unidimensional in nature. The inventories were not using each aspect of cultural change. Therefore, the researchers found variations in the outcome of the research within the same culture.